Welcome to my very quick start guide to Microsoft Power BI. I'm Ross Maynard and I'm going to get you started on Microsoft Power BI. Microsoft Power BI Desktop is available as a free download on the Microsoft Store. The desktop version works in the same way as the enterprise versions you may come across in your work. Get to grips with the desktop version and you'll be well on your way to becoming proficient with Microsoft Power BI in your workplace. Let's get started. On the screen you see three files. Let's suppose we're a financial services company and this is some of our data downloaded from various systems. The customer value file is a CSV file. That's because it normally contains more than the 1 million rows of data that Excel allows. It's too big to manipulate in Excel, but we can load it into Power Pivot in Power BI with no problem. This file contains the policy values of our customers along with the state that they're located in. The call data file contains details of recent calls into the company's contact center. Let's have a quick look at that file. The call data file shows the call number, the customer number, the call date, the customer's request, and the caller type. The third file is the transactions file. The transactions file shows transactions in the company's financial system with the action taken, the product, the source, and the channel of the action request. The customer number, the date the action was opened, and the date it was completed are also shown, and then we have the action's current status. Next we have the cost of the transaction, and at the end we have details of the letter sent to the customer as part of the transaction. For reporting reasons, we want to link these three files together and create a dashboard. If you are a reasonably experienced Microsoft Excel user, then you'll know about Power Query and Power Pivot. If you do, that gives you a head start with Power BI, which allows you to clean up data you want to import using Power Query, and manages the data you import to it in a data model in the same way as Power Pivot. It also uses the DAX formula language, although I'll not touch on that in this quick start guide. Let's open Power BI. Here's the Power BI start screen, and I'm going to import the files I want to use with Get Data. I click on Get Data and a screen pops up, giving me a choice of file types. The first file I'm going to import is the CSV customer value file. This value has too many rows for Excel, but Power Query and Power BI can handle it. I select the Text/CSV option, then navigate to the file location and select the customer value file. I click Open. It gives me a preview of the data in the file, and I click Transform Data as I want to clean it up before importing it. The Power Query window opens, and this is pretty much the same as Power Query in Excel. If you're familiar with that, then you're on home territory here. First I check that the customer number data is formatted as a whole number. Second, I want to check the format of the values in the middle column, the customer's total spend. We see it is formatted as a decimal number, which is what I want. Third, I check that the format of the customer account opened is a date. It is. And I check that the column with the state is text. To make reporting easier, I want to add two columns to this sheet. I select the column with the date that each customer's account was opened, and then I go to Add Column. Then I click Date, and I'm going to select the year. That gives us a column with the year the customer's account was opened. I double click on the column header and type Year Account Opened. Now I'm going to do the same for month. I select the customer account column again, since that's the one for which I want the month. Then Add column, go to the Date option and choose Month. Again, I double click the column header and type in Month Account Opened. That's enough for that table. I go to the Home menu and select Close and Apply. That data is now loaded into the data model, and we can see on the right of the pane we have the fields from the sheet available. Next, I'm going to load the transactions data. I go to Get Data and select Excel Spreadsheet. I choose the Transactions spreadsheet. Again, I get a preview. And I select the tab I want and select Transform Data. Customer number is the field that's going to link the files, so that I check that it's formatted as a whole number. I check that the transaction cost column is formatted as a decimal number. The other columns should all be formatted as text or as date, so I check those. Lastly, in the letter sent column, we see there's a code number for each letter and then a description of the letter sent. I actually want to split that text so that I have the letter code in a separate column. That will mean we can show data about the letters using the code, without having the description taking up space. I select that column. I choose Split Column and select Delimiter. The delimiter between the letter code and the description is space dash space, so I type that in and press OK. It split the columns, and I'll just rename this column Letter Code. To do that, I double click on the column header. The file is now ready to load into the data model. In the Home menu, I select Close and Apply. The new data fields appear in the Fields section of Power BI. Finally, I want to load the calls data into the model. I go to Get Data, choose Excel Workbook, and select the file named Call Data. I select Calls by Day data and click Transform Data. Again, I check the column formats, particularly that the customer number is a whole number. And that the date columns are formatted as date. These are all calls from May and June 2022, so I'm going to add columns for the month and the day. I select the date column, go to Add Column, select the date options, and choose Month and then Name of Month. I move that column next to the date by dragging it over. Then I select the date column again, and in the Add column I go to the date options and choose Day and Day. I'll drag that column over too. With that done, I'm ready to add this sheet to the data model. I go to the Home menu and select Close and Apply. Now we're ready to move on to some Power Pivot features in Power BI. So we're in the Power BI Startup screen. Our three tables are on the right there in the Fields section. The first thing we're going to do is link the three tables together. I go into Model View. There are the three tables and all the data fields. We see that Power BI has automatically detected and created linkages between the files. I select the link between the customer value file and the calls file, and right-click and select Properties. We see that it's using customer number as the key to link the files, and this is a many-to-one relationship from the calls table to the customer value table. Likewise, if I open the relationship between the transactions file and the customer value file, customer number is the key that links them, and there's a many-to-one relationship again. There's only one entry for each customer in the customer value table, so this table is the single key to link the other tables. Each customer may have made more than one transaction in the transactions table, and they may have made more than one call in the calls table. So I'm going to move the customer value table into the center, as it's the key table that the others will link to. With the tables correctly linked, let's go to Data View. In the Data View, we have each table displayed like a spreadsheet with the tabs on the right-hand side. On the ribbon at the top, we see the option to create measures. The data we loaded into Power BI is raw data. Power Pivot measures allow us to create totals and other calculations. Let's go to the customer value table and calculate the total policy values of all the customers. In the customer value table, I click New Measure. In the formula bar, it's entered the word measure and an equals sign. I double-click on the word measure and rename it to Total Customer Value. Then after the equal sign, I type sum, open bracket. It gives me a choice of all of the columns in all three tables, and I select the column I want to total, which is the total value in the customer value table. I select that and close the bracket. Then I select the tick or a compress return, and we see in the field section on the right is created a new field, Total Customer Value. The calculator icon next to it shows it's a calculated field. I'm going to go to the transactions file, and I'm going to create another measure to calculate the total transaction cost for the period covered by the data. We know how to do that now. I click New Measure. Over the word measure, I type total transaction cost. Then after the equal sign, it's sum, open bracket. Select the transaction cost field in the transactions table, close the bracket, and press Enter. It's added a calculated field, total transaction cost. That's all I'm going to do with measures, and I'm not going to cover the possibilities you have to add calculations with the DAX formula language. Once you get comfortable with the basics of Power BI, I recommend you look into more advanced features, including the DAX formula language. There are plenty of videos on YouTube and tutorial websites to help you. With all that done, we'll go into Report View, and we're ready to create our report. Now we've built our data model, modified the format of the tables, added columns as we need, and we've connected the different tables together to allow us to build charts and visuals with any combination of the data available. It's time to build our report. Let's go into Report View and get started. First, I would like to build a table that shows the number of customers in each state and their total value. I click on the table icon in the visualization section, and I'm going to drag the state field across. And the measure I made for total customer spend. We see that it gives me the total spend of customers in each state. Now I get to this point and I realize that I don't have a measure for the number of customers, but we see we can create a new measure in the report view too. I select the customer value table and click New Measure and give it the name Number of Customers. And then after the equal sign I type count, an open bracket, and choose the field I want, which is the customer number from the customer value table. I close the bracket and press return, and it gives me the new calculated measure in the customer value table. Now I drag that field to the table I'm creating in the report. Easy. Now let's do a chart of the total transaction cost for customers for each state. I click off the table I created and select Column Chart from Visualizations. I pull the state across from the customer value table, and the total transaction cost measure are created in the Transactions table. That doesn't seem a very interesting chart. Let's look at the number of transactions per product. Again, I click off the chart that's selected, and this time I'll create a pie chart. I select it from the Visualization section. Again, I need to create a new measure for the number of transactions. Clicking on the Transactions table, I select New Measure. I name the measure Number of Transactions. Then after the equals, I type count, open bracket, and I select the Actions column from the Transactions table to count the number of transactions. Then I close the bracket and press return. I drag the new measure into the pie chart. I'll stretch the chart to enlarge it. We can see that the products GPPU and IPPU are by far the largest in terms of the number of transactions. Let's quickly look at the number of letters of each type sent now. I select the line graph visualization, and I pull the letter code field into it from the transactions file and the number of transactions measure. I'll enlarge the box a little. and we see that the letter with code GEN007 is by far the most issued. Let's look at the number of calls by month. For that we need a new measure of the number of calls. I select the calls by day table and go to New Measure. I'll rename it Number of Calls. Then the formula is equals count, open brackets, call number in the calls by day table, then I close the bracket and hit return. Now I'll create a column chart with the calls per month. I select the column chart icon. I drag in the number of calls measure and the month name. There are far more calls in May than in June. That's not fantastically interesting, so let's untick the month and select caller type instead. Most calls are from policyholders. Big surprise. I'm sure you're getting the idea now. Once you have your data tables set up and connected, visuals are incredibly easy to create. And once you get the hang of it, you'll see how you can use filters to allow users to drill down into their area of interest. Let's finish this quick start guide with one of the visuals that I like, called cards. These are simple notices displaying headline figures. Let's choose the number of calls for this one. And another one with the total number of customers. And one with total customer spend. And one final one before I get carried away, of the total transaction cost in the period. My report is a bit random, as I've just been demonstrating creating visuals. There's a lot you can do to format your reports and add titles and so on. There's a lot more to learn, and this is only a quick start guide. Hopefully I've shown you enough to demonstrate how simple Power BI is to get started with. Power BI is a creative data visualization tool and very easy to learn. If you're comfortable with Excel, you will have no problems at all with Power BI. Practice it, play with it. Soon you'll have a new skill for your CV, and you'll be creating much more impactful dashboards and reports. I wish you luck, and thank you for watching.